Hey guys, thanks for listening in to the stories. We're a new channel with great stories to come and would really appreciate if you could help us out and subscribe. Let's make this new channel grow. It was meant to be one last weekend of freedom before we all went our separate ways. A final hurrah together as a group. Just a handful of my closest high school friends packing into 2 cars and heading off on another adventure. Our destination was a remote cabin nestled deep in the pine-filled woods outside of town. It had sat vacant for years since the owner's grandparents passed away, becoming something of a local legend. Teenagers liked to spin tales of hauntings and strange occurrences. We saw it as the perfect spot to let loose one last time without any supervision. Of course, none of us could have predicted just how wrong things would go once we arrived. The trip there started off lighthearted and cheerful. Music cranked up, we sang loudly and out of key, laughter ringing out over the chatter. The 7 of us were giddy with our newfound sense of independence. As the main road turned to a gravel trail leading us further into the dense forest, our boisterous noise quieted to an uneasy hush. Branches wove together overhead like a living ceiling as the tires crunched slowly over the uneven ground. It felt as though the very woods were pressing in, swallowing us into unknown depths. I glanced around uneasily at my companions, but their faces were obscured by shadows. After what seemed an endless drive, the trail finally opened up into a small rocky clearing. Looming ahead sat the dark outline of the cabin itself. In the waning light, it appeared almost sinister, the weathered facade dripping with peeling paint and moss. Crooked steps led up to a sagging porch framed by boarded windows like giant lifeless eyes staring out. Everything was still and heavy with a silence that blanketed the whole area. As the others hauled supplies and bags out of the cars, I lingered behind, a feeling of foreboding settling into my gut. Inside was musty and dim, the air heavy with the scent of stale dust. Motes swirled through angled beams of sunlight, peering past the boarded entryway. The wooden floorboards groaned under our footsteps, distressed by the unfamiliar weight after so many vacant years. 2 small bedrooms split off from the main room, bare mattresses piled on mildewed floors. My friends immediately staked claims on spots to sleep, their voices loud in the heavy stillness. Their nonchalant laughter echoed too bright as I stood frozen in place. A sense of unease prickled over me, sinking into my skin. Shaking myself mentally, I forced a cheerful tone. "Once we get some light in here, it won't seem so creepy," I offered, moving to open the shutters. My companions readily agreed, scoffing at my hesitation. Soon we had fresh air sweeping away the stale odor and sunlight chasing the shadows into corners. Supplies were put away in the dusty kit. Chen and a fire started in the ancient potbelly stove. The familiar warmth of the flames helped settle my nerves. As we all relaxed into the privacy and freedom of the cabin, I pushed aside my earlier fears. No more school bells or parent supervision. We had the whole weekend to ourselves out here. Exhaustion from travel and excitement must have eventually pulled me into sleep. When I startled awake, I was met by complete disorienting blackness. It took my foggy brain a few seconds to remember where I was. As I sat up slowly on the lumpy sofa, an explosive knocking reverberated through the still cabin. My breath jammed in my throat as my senses went on high alert. The banging came again, even louder, like someone slamming their fists against the outside walls. I stared wildly towards the boarded entryway, expecting to see an intruder breaking in. Instead, I found my friends rising in alarm from their makeshift beds, eyes wide with confusion and fear. We huddled close without a word as the pounding continued, echoing relentlessly out in the night. It felt never-ending, the noise throbbing through the stagnant air. None of us dared to move or speak, frozen in place as it went on and on. Finally, the knocking faded away, leaving us shaken in the resounding silence. No one slept again that night. Morning arrived slowly, the sun gradually inching over the treetops to spill into the cabin's main room. As soon as pale light filled the space, we scrambled to pack up, desperate to get as far away from this place as possible. The terror of that unknown intruder knocking in the dark left us anxious and jittery. I wanted nothing more than to leave. But as I went to toss my bag in the trunk, I froze. Lying right outside the front door was a gruesome sight. a large dead crow, its dark feathers matted and glistening with blood. Revulsion rose in my throat like bile. What could have done this during the night? Some wild animal from the surrounding woods, or something more sinister from within the cabin itself? I couldn't bring myself to touch the macabre thing. Leaving it where it lay, I hurried to the car, skin crawling. We drove off in choked silence, the events of the past night hanging over us like a storm cloud. In my heart, I knew we would never return to that cabin in the woods. Something evil had awoken in that remote place, an unseen darkness that wanted us gone. As the trees raced past my window, I mourned the loss of our carefree youth. The looming shadow of adulthood had found me here amongst the whispering pines, and a new fear settled into my very bones. A fear that would linger long after graduation day finally came. Just me, my best friend Jenna, and our boyfriends Alex and Ryan, at a cozy cabin we rented deep in the remote northern woods. A chance to relax and reconnect with nature without distractions from work and social media. But I'll never forget the chilling events that turned our trip into a waking nightmare. When we first arrived on that overcast Friday afternoon, the cabin seemed perfect. Quaint and rustic, surrounded by towering pines that made it feel wonderfully secluded. The kind of place you'd expect to find creepy antique dolls or mysterious locked trunks in the attic. We jokingly picked out rooms and speculated what relics from the past might still be lurking there. Little did I know the cabin's secrets would prove far more sinister than anything we imagined. That first night we drank wine by candlelight and stayed up late playing cards and telling ghost stories, laughing as the wind whistled outside. The smoke from the fireplace and our cheerful voices filled the old rooms with cozy warmth. Being sheltered from the howling wind made us feel safe there together. By morning, though, the atmosphere had already shifted. When I rose before my still sleeping friends, the cabin felt colder, foreign. Compelled by curiosity about the previous inhabitants, I decided to sneak down to the basement while everyone else was asleep. The old wooden stairs groaned under my weight as I descended cautiously. At the bottom, crude stone walls sealed away the light. I pulled a chain dangling from the single bare bulb overhead. The dim glow revealed a startling sight. Strange symbols and ominous words carved deep into the wood paneling. A dire warning, leave now or you will die. Icy fingers of dread clenched my spine. Questions flooded my mind, but there were clearly no answers here. Only secrets. This place wasn't ready to surrender. I rushed back upstairs, a nameless fear chasing me from those shadows. But paralyzed by what I'd witnessed, I said nothing to the others. I didn't want to scare them away from our long-planned trip. That was my first mistake. All day I wrestled alone with what I'd seen in the basement. I scrutinized every corner of the cabin, noticing new details that now seemed morbid and sinister. Odd reddish stains on the couch, clumps of unexplained long black hair, closet doors that swung open on their own as if pushed by an unseen hand. The cabin's rustic quaintness had turned cruel. At night, the wind's howl sounded almost like an animal in pain just outside the walls. I tossed sleepless in bed as an unnatural presence seemed to creep along the halls, knocking and scratching the walls relentlessly. Only I could hear it stalking me. Only I knew something evil walked here. By dawn, I was exhausted and on edge, desperate to flee this place. But my friends tried to reassure me it was just rural charm mixed with an overactive imagination. They had no idea that whatever malevolent entity inhabited this cabin had no intention of letting us depart. Those last precious minutes before we left felt like an eternity. As I grabbed my coat, my blood froze. New jagged scratches marred the inside of my closet door, violent and deep, like claws of some feral beast fighting to get out from within. Scrawled hastily below in an unearthly scrawl was the same dire phrase from the basement: "Leave now or you will die." No more warnings remained. This evil presence meant business. We had overstayed our welcome. Grabbing our bags, the four of us fled that wretched cabin as if hellhounds were snapping at our heels. Even safely back home, goosebumps still prickle my skin remembering the lurking sinister forces dwelling within those walls that wanted us gone. Or worse. Part of me wonders if we should have tried to burn the place down to contain that nameless horror. Could we even destroy something so malevolent? Now it's far too late. Pandora's box stays open, the evil within waiting for the next unlucky souls to be drawn in by the cabin's deceptive allure of rustic simplicity and safety. No one would believe my tale until it was too late. They'd have to see that cabin's true malice for themselves. And by then it could be the last thing they ever saw. Some doors are better left unopened, some secrets best left buried and forgotten. Curiosity and denial can unleash unspeakable terrors. Now I know true darkness hides within even the most innocent facades. There are reasons certain places remain untouched by time, reasons no sane person would want to confront. We were the lucky ones to escape that cabin's grasp with our lives intact, when so many before clearly didn't. But how long until that isolated haven calls out once more to the foolish and unwary? I pray I never find out. That grim cabin haunts my most fitful dreams as it is. Maybe someday I'll drive out into those remote woods again, just to see for myself if it still stands. To check if others have been unwise enough to stay too long past the setting sun. But then, do I really want confirmation that the abandoned cabin remains waiting there hungry for fresh souls? Perhaps not knowing is safer. After all, some doors are better left unopened. Where that cabin in the woods is concerned, I'm not sure I could bear the dread of what I might find if I returned to those shadowy pines. The unknown allows hope to prevail over darkness, at least for now, and I intend to keep it that way. I don't know what came over me to take that trip to Uncle's old cabin. He left it to me when he passed, but I hadn't been back since I was a kid. Still, fond memories pulled me there that crisp autumn weekend, hoping it would be a peaceful place to process my grief. I was dead wrong. The long drive should have been my first warning. Once I turned off the highway, the paved back roads gave way to gravel, then deeply rutted dirt. The further I went, the denser the forest grew. Gnarled oaks and pines pressed in claustrophobically along the narrow lane. Their skeletal branches reached toward me like gnarled hands as I navigated around potholes. No other cars passed me for miles. By the time the gloomy cabin emerged, any hint of civilization felt far behind. My white-knuckled grip on the wheel tightened further when I saw the state of the place. The hand-hewn logs looked warped under generations of neglect. Leaves and forest debris choked the sagging porch and piled against the walls. One window gaped open blackly like a missing tooth. When I turned off the engine, the silence rang in my ears. Warily, I tested the key Uncle had left. The iron lock clanked open reluctantly, as if offended by the disturbance. Inside, dust layered every surface, muffling my steps on the creaky floorboards. The 70s wood paneling and furniture lurked under yellowed sheets. It felt less like a home than a mausoleum. Mounted deer heads watched me with glassy eyes. Despite the atmosphere, I tried making the best of it. I cleared cobwebs off the lumpy bed in the back room and lit a fire against the autumn chill. The flames made shadows dance eerily on the walls. All the while, the cabin groaned and settled around me. I ate cold canned soup for dinner, uneasy in the gloom. That first night, sleep eluded me for hours as the unfamiliar sounds of the forest played outside. Creatures scurrying, branches creaking, a haunting owl's hoot. Exhaustion finally pulled me under, but my dreams were plagued by a shapeless lurking presence, barely glimpsed in the corners of my vision. I woke feeling watched, pulse racing. Morning's light lifted my mood a little. I tried to recapture my childhood love of these woods by going on a hike, but the tangled trail unnerved me. Trees crowded the path, bare branches like skeletal fingers scratching the sky. Every snapping twig jolted my heart. It felt less like a stroll than running a gauntlet of unseen eyes. I turned back well before dusk with nerves rattled. That night, my haunted dreams returned. I wandered endless corridors, pursued by a sinister shuffling just behind. Shadowy claws grasped at me from every doorway. I jolt awake, convinced something lurked just out of sight, waiting for my guard to drop. I did not sleep again. By morning, I was exhausted, paranoid. I hastily packed up the car, needing to escape this oppressive place. When I entered the main room, I halted in dismay. All my belongings were tossed about chaotically. Clothes, bags, books scattered across the floor. Furniture lay overturned, curtains ripped down. Heart pounding, I scanned for an intruder. But nothing seemed stolen, just violently disordered. Rushing to gather my things with shaking hands, I saw the front door hanging open. Dread prickled my spine at the sight of leaves skittering across the porch, caught in an unnatural rhythm. The trees swayed too fluidly, skeletal shadows grasping at the walls. And for an instant, I swore I glimpsed a humanoid shape dart behind the shed before it went still and empty once more. That was all I needed. I raced to the car, speeding off in a spray of gravel down the narrow lane. I didn't slow until I hit the highway, finally safe among others. Only then did my white-knuckled grip relax slightly. But my heart continued pounding, nerves frayed by what I'd witnessed, or thought I'd witnessed. In the rearview mirror, nothing pursued me from that deserted forest. Yet I could not shake the feeling that something sinister lurked in those remote woods, maybe attached to the cabin itself. Something that invaded my sleep and violated that place when I left it unguarded in the light of day. Just negative energy or something more. I'll never know, because I'm not going back. I sold the place soon after. Driving past the turnoff still gives me chills. Whatever presence dwelled there infected me. My dreams remain plagued by that shapeless lurking terror, patiently waiting to consume me. No place feels safe now, but I won't let it draw me back. That cabin took something from me that weekend, my last shreds of hope and peace. All that remains is fear.